that we're live.
We're live.
It says preparing to live stream your meeting, setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. I don't know why it
Why?
tells me all these things every week, because I know every week we want it to do exactly the same thing.
Then why are you
But
reading off? Why are you reading off the
well, I
procedure?
mean,
Then
uh,
I don't
why
think the
not?
viewers
Like,
care
because
as
I,
long
I
as they
would
can see it.
say that, well, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm reading it, because people would be listening to it, Nick, like they can't actually see it. I
I
mean,
don't think they care if they're listening either, as long as
well,
the
I mean,
picture shows up.
sometimes, you know what? One of the best news stories I saw on Fox 2 recently was a behind the scenes news story about how they have been bringing everyone the news for the past a year of the pandemic, and it was a behind the scenes story, and it was one of my favorite news stories of the past year. So sometimes I think, Nick, that people, I guess I would say that I personally enjoy it when I know what's going on behind the scenes. It makes me feel like a part of the show.
I think you're incorrectly speaking for the masses when you say that. I think most people don't care what's going on behind the scenes. As long as the end product is as expected, that's good enough.
Well, you
Now,
know what?
I care, John. I do care.
Well, you know what, Nick, I really care about. I care about our opening music, Nick. So
Do it.
it's time for the show, Nick.
Do it.
Welcome to Funniest Part of My Name, a podcast about math and Korean culture, with a side of humor. For information about our podcast, please visit www.johnoaks.com.
And now here are your hosts, 프로페서 승찬 and 닉 하하하.
All right, Nick. So today, for our well, actually, let's start with the and you know what? I I've had a whole lot of computer issues all day, Nick, and actually all week, to the point.
All week. It's Monday.
Well, yeah, like the whole past week, like the whole past month. It's really been a month of computer issues, Nick.
Oh,
I'll
come
tell
on,
you that
John. We
that's
have to listen to you
exactly
complain.
well, that's exactly why there's only one episode of the show up on Spotify, because when I've tried to put episode number 2 and number 3 and number 4, I keep on getting, well, not error messages, but just nothing happens. And so I go and like, if you go to the actual RSS feed, then it's there, so everyone can go to the website or to our YouTube area to listen to the past shows, but Spotify does not like us. And you know what? I can't figure out why.
So it's Spotify's fault.
Well, yeah, it's Spotify's fault.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'll say, Nick, I know that I talked to some people that I know who are living in Korea right now, like my friend Brian. You know Brian,
I
because
do know Brian. Yes.
we went on his virtual Airbnb experience a few months ago, and
A few months ago. That was like.
so I've heard from. It was a couple of months ago, right?
All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's the end of March. Yeah. It
Yeah.
probably was about 2
So
months ago. Okay.
so I will say that, like, I don't know if you know the situation in Korea right now, Nick, but in terms of getting the vaccine there, it's not so easy right now. And what, just last week, I think South Korea just approved the AstraZeneca vaccine for people over 65. And so then, even with that, I guess there's still, of course, going to be a very big shortage, especially at first. And so the first and second doses are going to be spread out instead of 8 weeks apart up to 12 weeks apart. And then also with the virus news out of Korea last Friday. I don't know if you knew this, Nick, but
No, I'm not up to speed on it,
yeah,
so
so
I'm learning right now.
but last Friday, the South Korean capital of Seoul was still mandating that all foreign workers who work in the city be tested for coronavirus. And then like they finally last Friday withdrew that mandate because it was seen as discriminatory against foreign nationals when the same testing requirement didn't apply to Korean workers in the city. And so what are your overall thoughts on these two stories about the virus and the vaccine and the different mandates in Korea right now, Nick?
What was that last part? You said foreign workers have to
Yeah,
be
foreign
tested.
nationals,
What
like
is?
foreign workers in Seoul up through last Friday were required to actually be tested for coronavirus if they worked in the city of Seoul. And so now the city is still recommending the test for foreigners employed at workplaces that are at risk of spreading infections, such as bars and small factories, but not necessarily mandating the testing for all foreign workers. So, uh, between that and the fact that Korea in general right now is just now starting to roll out the vaccine, like, do you think that this is still maybe needed, or do you think it was an unfair requirement of the foreign workers, or what do you think, Nick?
It seems an odd requirement for foreign. I mean, does that mean it could be people that have been living there as non-citizens for several years that still fall into that classification?
Yeah, so it's really just, you know I think that there's always been this issue of Koreans in general thinking th- th- that well, I guess in a way, just thinking that they should be a little bit apprehensive of all of the foreigners coming into Korea, because Korea has for such a long time been a very homogeneous like country, right?
Right.
Like all Koreans and no outsiders, and so almost everyone in Korea looks almost the same. And so I I think that although I wouldn't suspect that most foreigners who live in Korea, or even foreign visitors to Korea, would feel unsafe most of the time being in Korea. But I I do think that Koreans do, in a way, feel a little bit like I guess apprehensive really is the best word for of having the foreigners around. So, what do you think now, Nick?
Well, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to employ more not rigorous, but more frequent testing for what you described as foreign workers. I mean, if you're somebody who is just there on a work visa but has been there for several years on that visa, I mean, in terms of how the virus is related, you're no different than any person who was born and raised in Korea and has lived there for 30, 40, 50, 80 years. I mean, I understand, like, if it's somebody who just moved there in the last, I guess, month or two, yeah, that makes sense because it's international travel fairly recently. But again, if you're someone who's been there like throughout the entire time that the virus has been a worldwide event, it doesn't make any sense to me to test those particular people any more than anybody else. I mean, I guess if you're going to offer testing for everybody, I mean, I guess that's great. I mean, but the other question I have now is who's paying for these tests? I mean, it costs money to administer these tests. And if you're just giving them strategically to people, who is footing the bill for that? So there's a lot of questions I want to know about this before I can say really my opinion on it. But I guess at face value, it seems a little counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve with this testing.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I will say that one thing that really is interesting to me is how Korea was like like if you think about a year ago, South Korea was on the forefront of leading the testing and doing all the drive-through testing and
That's right.
walk-up testing,
That's right.
like before any other country was. And now they're sitting near the bottom of the list in terms of getting the vaccine rolled out. And so I think that's one thing that really actually is it might seem surprising to a lot of people at the uh, like at face value, but I think that's a good reminder that Korea actually um, is not like classified as like one of the richest countries in the world. Like it has a lot of big corporations that actually drive its overall economy, but a lot of the people in Korea are still living in small villages, and they don't have necessarily a lot of money because a lot of people in Korea are especially I know in Seoul are employed by the government in some form, whether it's even like taking trash out or picking up the trash or cleaning the streets or whatever it might be. And a lot of those are part-time jobs, but i I'll say that like that I think says everything you need to know about the disparity right there, and why Korea was leading the way for testing, but now they weren't able to be one of the first countries to get that big government contract for a lot of doses of the vaccine.
But there's a lot more that goes into that than just trying to equate the nation's overall wealth and prosperity to, I mean, there's a lot of logistics that go into that, both the supply and the logistics to administer it. I've heard enough, even in the US here, of difficulty with logistics in getting it administered and proper storage procedures for it, and knowing that if you take it out of its cold storage, the way it has to be kept and transported, and people, for as an example, I know if you don't show up, a lot of times they're throwing out doses because they end up expiring because of the temperature exposure. And there's all kinds of things like that that go into it as well. And I guess if you actually run the numbers and look at, well, okay, Korea's had the vaccine available for X amount of time, and the US has had it available for X amount of time, what percentage of people have been vaccinated? I mean, I don't know how those numbers compare between, even within the US. I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of people have received their, or I imagine it's probably in the seven figures now, but how many people have received it in the US? I mean, maybe comparatively, that's not that much different than a lot of other countries. Obviously, the the gross number is going to be different, but I don't know if like the percentage of population's different. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah, the percentage is actually a lot lower. I think this is a couple of days ago, but I know, unbelievable. I don't know what's going on with my computer, Nick. I told you something was unreal, and I told you this was causing a lot of issues for me because I'm just looking at the screen and nothing's and all of a sudden I get a loud video of and things saying it's unreal. But all I can say, Nick, is I think that the last number I heard like a couple of days ago is that the U.S. was I know that my numbers aren't the most current. So like I know Korea was at like 1.9%, and the US was at like around 17.1% at the same time.
17. That seems high. Honestly,
So
that seems high. I hope it is that high, but it
yeah, I think that
I mean, that's 17 million, 17%, you said?
yeah, so I do
That's
think
like 60 million people.
yeah,
I think
but
there's like almost 400 million people in the US now, so that's a
here,
lot more
you
than
know
I
what,
thought.
Nick, if I would love to bring you up to date numbers as soon as I I can. Actually, you know what, Nick? It says that the uh South Korea's vaccination rate is no. Oh, you know what? I have to get the actual table because it just gave me the chart because I'm telling you, like, I don't know why this computer is doing this to me because I love to tell you the number. I will absolutely love to tell you the
It's
number.
okay, John. I get it. The struggle is real.
Well, the struggle is real, Nick. That's all I
I
can
know.
say.
I know.
So Korea is at 1.32%.
Okay.
And
That's a lot lower.
so it was up from 1.19 or something. I just quoted you. In the United States, well, actually, it is higher than I thought at the last check that I had. It's not 37.2%. So these are numbers as of yesterday. So they're updated daily. So there you go, Nick. So right now, I'd say that the highest percentage is actually, well, this doesn't make sense. How is a country over 100%?
People are doubling down.
You really think that's what it is, Nick?
No.
I
No.
mean, I think, well, and
What country is
either,
over 100%?
well, Gibraltar, that's strange,
All right.
and Israel,
I guess I'm
and
not surprised by that.
well, now we're a country I can't pronounce, Nick. So I think
Just
that means it's
quit there.
time for a commercial break, Nick.
Okay.
I mean, unless you want to try to tell the listeners how you say this: SEYCHELLES.
I need to see it written out, so we'll do it some other time.
I don't know what that means. I mean, it can't be that hard, Nick. Seychelles. That sounds.
Oh, the
about,
Seychelles. The Seychelles.
See, I knew it.
The
I knew that.
Seychelles. It's
that
a group of islands in the Indian Ocean, like to the east of Madagascar.
Okay. Hey, do you know where Texas is at, Nick?
Where what is?
Texa, TEXA.
Texa?
Right.
That's a country?
Well,
Are you trying to trick me?
No, I don't know. I'm not saying that a country, but I'm asking like it is a real place. I don't think it's its own country, but do you happen to know where it's at?
No, I have never heard that word before.
Yeah, so it's an island that is in Scotland, actually, and I do know that one of my students actually tried to convince me this past week that it was um in Italy, but I looked it up, and I think that my student may have realized what was going on, because then he he put an S on the end of it to make it Texas. So I well, I did learn one thing, Nick, that Texas a real place.
Okay, we'll go sometime.
I'm not going to Scotland. Are you kidding me? Like I would not go to Scotland to see Texas. Like what I would do is just go to Texas and then just cover my hand up, cover the S up
Oh,
over the S, and just say I've been to Texas. I mean,
you
it would be
would
a lot cheaper.
you would take that kind of shortcut.
Yeah, I would. Why not, Nick? And here's a shortcut right to the
All
next
right,
break.
do it.
Thank you for listening to Funny is Part of My Name. We'll be back with more right after this break.
Now, Nick, I have good news for you.
Okay.
That I am going to um, get your opinion on a few other stories here. Isn't that good news?
Always good news.
All
It's never
right.
bad. It's never bad news from you, John.
Yeah, it never is, right?
Nope, not since I've known you.
So I I'm sure that you've heard the news that that there have been a lot of crimes involving Asian people, especially of late. And
I am aware.
so for the people listening right now who uh, do not know what happened in Atlanta
John, I think it's fair to
last week.
assume that the viewers are aware of the. I mean, it's national news, so I think if
Well,
you're a responsible adult, you should be up to speed with things of that level of significance.
like you would think, but I have an example of how in college I was doing a project, and it involved Wheel of Fortune, and I made a reference to Vanna White, and somebody got really upset with me and said that I shouldn't assume that people know who Vanna White is, or
I
things
don't
like
think you
that.
should make that assumption either, though.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure why, because I think that Wheel of Fortune have been around long enough that a
Mm,
lot of people know who Vanna White is. So
yeah, but a lot don't. I mean, that's not to not to marginalize the show, but I feel like knowing who she is a little more obscure than current events going
well,
on
I mean,
present
well, I
day.
guess my point is I guess my main point, Nick, is that from that day I've learned just not to assume things. So I at least
Okay.
want
All
to
right.
read a little excerpt of like a short summary of what happened, and then that will give uh, us and the listeners a a like a overview. So
Do it.
all right, so 8 people, including 6 Asian women, were killed in a series of shootings at 3 Atlanta area day spas on last Tuesday. So police arrested a 21-year-old white male after a statewide manhunt and believe he was responsible for all the attacks. So, uh, although at this point, the suspect there is still claiming that his motive was not to specifically target Asians. The shootings do come amid a spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans. So last week, several churches in Seattle were targeted with anti-Asian graffiti, and then a Texas ramen restaurant was also targeted with graffiti after Texas lifted its mask mandate, and the ramen restaurant owner spoke up about it. And then in New York City, the NYPD is stepping up counterterrorism patrols of Asian communities as a precaution. So, in addition to the mass shooting in Atlanta, there's a lot of other anti-Asian violence going on right now, and especially here in the US. And since the pandemic began, there've been around 3,800 hate crimes against Asian Americans reported since last March. So, what are your thoughts on this uptick in violence, Nick?
It's an unfortunate demonstration that certain people, whether they are just purely not educated in humanity or civility, make correlations between people and what is going on in the bigger universe of the world, and thinking that there's this necessity to either remove or enforce whatever their feelings are on people that have no direct responsibility or connection to what the cause of the larger public health situation worldwide has been for the last year. So I don't know, maybe I just take for granted that I know what is appropriate and what is not when I'm upset about a situation. Or the thing I kind of been mulling for the last 6 days here, 5 days, is what is really going through somebody's mind when an individual is angry at a person, or angry at a group of people, or angry at a type of person or type of people, that the individual thinks that a viable option is to physically assault, or in this case, kill and murder individuals. There's obviously people in this world, both individuals and groups, that I don't like either. But the idea of ever taking out my distaste for any of those people via violence it doesn't even strike my mind. And I imagine most people have that level of discretion, but the people who don't, I just don't know what is going through those individuals' minds. And I think there's two parts here to remember, is that sure, we want to change the view people have of certain other people in this world for whatever reason, that okay, they don't like these people, but there's no real like direct reason why. But then the other part is, that's part of that is human nature, and when that does happen, what possesses people, or what convinces people to think it's all right to go kill somebody because I don't like that person, or I don't like the group of people or the demographic to which that person belongs, or whatever. I'm at a loss for words as to how to describe that kind of motive. And the idea of thinking that, I mean, we were still figuring out details about the situation in Atlanta, but I guess any of these other situations that we've seen in the last year or so, it, I, I think like you just have to. I would love to sit down and ask a lot of these perpetrators. Okay, so yes, I think we can all agree that the virus originated in interior China. Uh, I mean, you know, the why and the how. I think we'll never know the full story, but in terms of the geography, I think most people agree that yes, it originated in interior China. But what does beating the snot out of some Asian person here in the U.S. accomplish in regards to that? I just there's like just a complete lack of logical and rational thinking that these people must be using to process the situation, and I just don't understand when. I mean, you want to believe that society is becoming more educated because of the accessibility we have to information with the internet and with discussion boards and shows like this where people can share information and share thoughts and opinions and discuss things openly, and that it can be broadcast to audiences wherever with relative ease. That, you know, we are becoming a more educated society, but the idea of people again just assimilate, it's associating somebody based on something that's largely kind of superficial, uh, being responsible for, you know, causing just, you know, mass misfortune around the world. It just, I can't, I don't know how to comprehend that train of thinking in my own mind.
Yeah, I think that you know, like I'm taking a Korean language class right now, and so I know that when I went to class on Saturday, our teacher in the class like asked us like how we were doing, like like with the understanding that as people who are are taking a Korean language class, that even the people who are not Asian who are in the class like have some investment in the Asian community, in some connection to the Asian community. And so we spent the a beginning of class just like sort of sharing out our thoughts and feelings, especially over the events of the past week with the Atlanta shootings. And I'll say that the thing that I shared is that I personally have been a little bit just, I guess, quiet about what's going on, because I haven't necessarily known like what I should say, or how I like how I uh might want to feel, or I haven't really had time to even process the entire last year in its entirety. And then last Tuesday I found out about the shooting. So I'll say that what I did share is that I live in a area where on Lunar New Year this year, my neighbor even brought over a like a Lunar New Year card and wished me best wishes for the upcoming year. And so I feel I feel a level of some support in my own immediate neighborhood. But sometimes when I go outside of that space, I do know that the majority of the time I I feel safe, but I get that glaring eye once in a while, or I get that settling comment. And there's been a lot of times where I I I've just ignored it. And then there have been the times when I've spoken up. And when I've spoken up and I've confronted the verbal attacks, it never really, I guess, has ended with the strangers around me coming to my defense or anything like that. But the last time I remember, I was in the Macomb Mall. And at least the time I remember the most vividly, I was in the Macomb Mall. And some kids were following me around and around and around. And I realized what was going on with their gestures and their comments that they didn't think I could hear. And so I confronted them. And I I remember, because it was a white kid and a black kid and um and a couple of kids in the group. And so I remember it vividly, because the the uh, black kid actually said to me, like, he put his hands up, like, not me, not me. And and said, like, it it wasn't me. And I remember that I called him out and said, you know what, like, you follow your friend around and let him, like, taunt me without speaking up. So you're just as at fault for the situation escalating. Like, not, you might not be at fault for the directly tormenting me, but you didn't speak up. And then I remember just walking away at that point, after you know uh like I made it clear to the entire group of kids that I thought that they all were in the wrong in some way. And then I remember that I went to the Old Navy. And a lady came up to me and said, like, hey, like, I saw what was happening. Those kids were in the wrong. Well, you know what? Like, that at that point, that did nothing to help me. All it did was tell me that she that lady was willing to stand there and let me take it the whole time. It And so, like, I do feel like I'm fairly safe at home. And like, if my neighbor just wouldn't let anything happen to me in this fairly quiet neighborhood. But like, once you leave that space, like, you never know what can happen out there. So I I know that, like, you never know the day that somebody might go beyond the just verbal tormenting and pull out a gun, or or perform some sort of physical violence. So I can see it getting way out of hand. And so in some ways, I guess I'm just thankful, Nick, that it hasn't ever gotten to that point for me, at least as an adult. Not that I do remember like situations as a kid, but as an adult, like I am thankful to not have experienced any physical harm. And so I I do like completely support like my Asian friends in the Asian community, in the Black community, in my Muslim friends, and all of my minority friends that I have, in like I support them all in solidarity, because we've all had like situations where we've experienced racism, and so in violence against us. And I'll tell you, Nick, this is one thing that I will say, that like people who want to help right now, like I feel like at the top of the list is always like, well, you should check in on your Asian friends and families, or your Asian friends and coworkers. But like I had a friend this week who who I contacted him for something else, and he said to me, I really am glad that you brought up some of the events in the world, because I've been wanting to reach out to you to just see how you're doing, but I I thought that that you might just want your own like quiet space to like in time alone to process your thoughts and feelings. And so he wanted to check in on me, but he didn't know what to say, and he wanted to make sure that he gave me some space to process my thoughts and feelings. But he said something very, what I felt to be profound, at least, that he is Muslim, and so he told me about like how he felt after 9/11, when the attacks against Muslims were at a peak after 9/11. And he said, like John, like this is how I've I felt in the past when violence has been at its peak against people in my community. And so the least I can do is like try to stand in solidarity with you, and the least I can do is to give you the space that you need to process everything. And the least I can do for you is to like be there to listen if you want to, and talk if you want to. Uh and I I can't like thank my friend enough for like taking the time to like share his own experiences with me as well, because I think it's helpful for people as they process everything that's been going on, to realize, hey, like you're not alone, you're not in the like in this by yourself, and there's places that you can go to have somebody to listen to, whether it's like a friend, or a family member, or a coworker, or a like a trauma agency, or there's lots and lots of resources for people, and we'll make sure that we put them somewhere in online, so that people can find the ones at least that I know that I've been given as a list of like mental health and therapy resources. But yeah, I think that people really do need to take care of themselves right now, and realize that violence and discrimination against all races and all colors of people, and are all interconnected, and that the best thing is for people who want to help is to check in, but also like stand up and speak out when they hear something. And so if you want to be that ally, if somebody wants to be that ally, like, don't be the person who like didn't come up to me until after the incident was over in the Old Navy. Like, speak up sooner, like say something sooner, realize that it's okay to uh like say something, because we're never going to get rid of any of this discrimination and oppression against a lot and lot uh, of, of people, and for many, very many reasons, if we don't stand up. And I say this especially for, like, even as a Korean male, like, that I have to realize that Asian females and Asian women are seen even differently than Asian men in America, and Asian men in general, and then especially even Asian adoptees and who are women, I'm sure feel even more like, I know, feel even more mixed feelings and messages on top of the already compounded feelings that they must be feeling right now. So I guess to summarize, like, for me, Nick, like, I I know that it's a lot for everyone to unpack, but that I want to make sure that everyone knows where I I stand on issues, and that I'm not going to s- to uh, take any violence or discrimination against anyone for racial reasons or any discriminatory reasons. And if I can do what I can to try to support people, my friends and families and my students, before it gets to the point where somebody goes out and shoots somebody, or does something violent, and and then the world is just staring at them, thinking like why would you do that as a result of just having a bad day? Well, w- why don't we have that discussion too about mental health in America and mental health worldwide, so that like these type of incidents, or like any particular incident on a person, won't get to a point where violence will occur for any reason at all. And then we can, as we we talk about that, get rid of all of this other uh, discrimination as well. So anyway, Nick, what are your thoughts now that I've made my statement here?
I think it's a good reminder that people who want to help and be involved, I, I think there's different options for them to be a helping hand, and different people are going to feel more comfortable helping in different ways. And I think we have to remember to acknowledge that in this situation and realize that people who are legitimately trying to help, like, just to try not to, I guess, keep score of how individuals are attempting to do their part to better the situation. And some people, like you kind of alluded to it, some people it's, checking in on you or checking in on me is, I mean, it really, when you boil it all down at days end, like, keeping ourselves in a good place and safe, that is the most important thing. I mean, sure, we all want to alleviate these situations and prevent them in the future, but I think it's the people who matter to us that are, should come first. And I that's, great hearing stories like you shared of a friend of yours who, does not share the commonalities with you, that would be feeling the same emotions as you in the situation, but that individual, contacted you just to make sure, John, are you all right? Are you both physically and emotionally in a safe space after what happened the other day? So in regards to your situation at the mall, I agree with you in being a bit salty about the store employee acknowledging that the situation was inappropriate, but I do want you to make sure that you just don't get upset. Don't get too upset with that individual, because even though, yes, you can certainly swing that into enablement, which it kind of in a way definitely is, but just, don't let yourself get more upset with that individual than what the source of the situation was.
Oh, well, yes. And actually, Nick, just a clarification that actually wasn't an Old Navy employee.
Well,
It was yeah.
regardless,
So it was actually
another customer.
no, well, yeah, it was a lady who saw everything happening in the hallway, and then I went into the Old Navy to get away from the kids, uh and that lady was following me, like behind me, because she was going into the Old Navy also. But in all honesty, like, if it were a, a store employee, I, I I guess not that, from my viewpoint, that this is like will make a lot of sense, but I would be more understanding if the employee felt like they couldn't leave the store to come out into the hallway to see what the commotion was all about, because they were, an employee would be working when that this was just a bystander who was in the hallway. But maybe that's a different issue about, like, that you can go into a lot of, like, bystander bias and all of that. And
Yeah, I think that's
anyway,
a different conversation. I mean,
yeah.
it's related in this case, but I think that's a tangent that's best kept for a different time. I think, right now there's really two topics that need to be addressed in the larger space of society. One is how do we get individuals. I mean, I think most people, I think and I think that's the thing that we have to keep in mind and take in stride, is that the majority of individuals out there are not the problem. It's a select few, and we just need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. It's not every single person, or the most people out there are the problem. It's not the case. It is, there's less problems than there are not problems. So, but anyways, it's finding ways to solve, quote unquote, the problem people, in the sense of what needs to be done with those kind of people to show them, or to make them aware that there is a proper way to view your fellow human being. And then the other part of it is, I don't in any way claim that we're going to solve problem number one overnight. So I suppose the other thing to consider is, what do you do to people to make sure that they know that, like, you can't, the world is not a free for all. You can't, yes, I can't just snap my fingers and have people stop hating each other. But while they still are, and hopefully we can get better with that, is how do you stop people from thinking, oh, I hate you, now I'm going to go shoot you? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, what it's like people all of a sudden forget what the laws are of this country, or of whatever municipality, because I don't like somebody. And I don't, it boggles my mind how people in the moment, or situationally think or believe that, well, I don't need to conform to the laws because I don't like people, or I don't like this person.
Yeah, and I guess, Nick, that all goes back to what I was alluding to a little bit earlier about how I think that it would be like, for me, a big blessing if it was more acceptable to seek out mental health resources, so that, like, these few individuals do get the help they need before it turns to the point of violence. So um, I will say, Nick, that I think that this has been helpful for both of us to talk about the events of the past weekend. I hope that our listeners will realize that you're definitely not alone, and there are resources available, and I'm sure that most of our listeners know where to find both of us if they want to chat with us. So I I have good news for you, Nick, though.
Okay.
I want to end the show on a positive note. And so after the short break, I'm going to give you some soju tips, and
Oh,
then we can listen to your final joke of the week as
could leave that out, could
usual,
you?
Nick. All right. So it's time for the commercial break here.
Thank you for listening to Funny is Part of My Name. We'll be back with more right after this break.
Now, Nick, I know that earlier this past few days that you were inquiring about where to buy soju.
Yeah,
So,
were you waiting until tonight to answer my questions about it?
well, where is this new mysterious place that you are going to work? Is it, what city is it in,
It's in Ann
Nick?
Arbor on the west side.
Oh, so I'm not sure I can give you tips of where to find soju there, but
It's all right.
I will tell you that my favorite place. So I know that I recommend getting a pen and paper out, Nick, but I know
Oh,
that
come on, John. Can't you just message these to me later?
well, yeah, but I
Don't make me
can,
work so hard.
I know, but I should get the word out there for the
All right.
listeners at
Okay.
least.
Okay.
So I know that H Mart in Troy has a decent selection, but since the pandemic has been going on there, they've been using like cheaper brands of soju. So I don't know if I would recommend them right now, but H Mart in Troy does have soju. Zaytuna liquor or Zaytuna liquor store. It's at Rochester Road in 59 has soju, and they have some fruit flavored soju also. I know that the Capital Wine and Liquor, that party store on Square Lake in Rochester Road, has soju. And then I know that you can get soju from the where is it, like the Daebak, where we get
Oh yeah.
Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have the whole
Yeah.
soju cooler there, so you
Yeah.
can get,
In Minji. Yeah.
yeah, you can get soju there, bottles to go, Nick. And then I know that I'm pretty sure that they'll be reopening sometime in April, but uh, Chicago Deli over on Old 13, where I I get my haircut. Actually, they will order soju if they don't have it in stock, and then also let's see, Oak Ridge. Is it Oak? I have is it Oak Ridge or Oak Crest?
John, all these places are like the wrong direction I want to
Oh,
go.
yeah, but Oak Crest uh Market Liquor, that party store on DeQuinder between 15 and 16 has like so much soju that actually whenever I go in there, I buy like a whole case, and they always bring it out to me in a nice little padded box so that none of it gets none of the bottles get broken when I drive home. So I would recommend going there, Nick. So
And there's a telltale right there, everyone, that John buys his soju in boxes.
and then Nick, if you go to the 168 Asian Mart on like it's in the Target Plaza uh, near 14 and John R. They
God,
have
these are all like an
they have
hour away from
soju
me.
there, Nick. So you know what, Nick? What you should do is just like go the long way to work one day, and then
A
just
long way to work, so I like leave my home at 5 in the morning in order to make this detour.
yeah, why not, Nick? I mean,
Are you gonna make
soju.
me breakfast?
Well, sure. Korean breakfast is usually porridge and maybe
Remember, I can't eat eggs.
well, you know what, Nick? That's okay. I'll make you some porridge,
All right, I'll eat
and
that.
then let's see, some maybe.
Can you put some kimchi in the porridge?
Well, I don't know if that would be very good, Nick.
Why?
Well, I just don't think that
You
I.
put you put kimchi on rice or white rice with kimchi. I mean, porridge just
Uh,
it's just grain
well,
cereal.
I guess. I mean,
I mean, don't
there
put any
is a
sugar in it.
there
It's
is a
just
kimchi
unsweetened.
rice porridge
Yeah, there we go.
or kimchi kanji recipe, or there's a kimchi juk.
Okay, I'll be
There's
over at
some
6:30.
there's some uh bulgogi kimchi juk. There's some really strange Korean concoctions here,
Okay.
Nick, but I'll say that I've only had a real like traditional Korean breakfast once, and it was when I was in LA, and I went to a little like diner, and I thought that it would be just a nice little diner by the beach. I walk in, and it's owned by Koreans, and they give me rice and kimchi for breakfast. So and they of course put an egg on the top because they have eggs. They have to have eggs for bibimbap, and it is what it is, right? So yeah, like I'll make you some kimchi porridge, Nick. Why not?
Okay.
With a side
Not
of
not tomorrow morning. I'm not coming
with
over
a
that
side of
early.
soju.
I'm not coming over that early tomorrow, but don't worry, John. I'll figure it out. There's a couple of Korean slash Asian markets in the Ann Arbor area. So maybe one of these days after work, I'll stop by and
Well,
pick some up.
like try to get the strawberry, and
I'll try.
then
Yeah, I'm gonna try, but I mean, they have what they have, so just
well, yeah, but
might not have
try
a choice.
well, don't get the JOA brand. That brand is awful. But I've actually tried the Good Friends, and the
JOA
Good
brand,
Friends.
is that short for John Oaks?
Well, no, I don't know what JOA soju stands
It's
for,
kind of like John Oaks,
but the
JOA.
Good Friends brand is okay. And I mean, chumchurum, of course, is what I would prefer, but I don't think that we're going to get that very easily. But you can get soju on Amazon, Nick. But
Okay, well, you
but
can
you
get
have
anything
to,
on Amazon, so that's not a mystery.
yeah. But Amazon doesn't really. I don't think it's supposed to doesn't really sell alcohol, and so but another name for soju is noju, and so if you look for noju, then all of the uh, all of the soju pops up, and I don't think Amazon has caught on yet.
Oh, well, I think that's only going to fly under the radar for so long. But if it's as long as it is, you might as well take advantage.
Well,
I could definitely see you ordering.
I haven't ordered any of that yet because I have my other suppliers, Nick. I don't need Amazon for soju. Are you
Okay,
kidding me?
I
All right.
just
So
I can see you doing that.
what other jokes do you have, Nick? Like close us out with your final joke here.
All right. Well, in closing, thanks everyone for listening in on a little heavier topic today. We'll be back to our usual comedy and trivia and John's humiliation of me next week. But thanks for sticking with us. Be safe. If you need help in any kind of way, just please be confident and comfortable enough to go seek out or to ask for that, whatever it might be, and for whatever reason you may need it. All right. So closing out with the corny joke of the night. John, I went to Whole Foods the other day. Do you know what I bought?
Something with a hole in it.
Yes, I bought bagels, donuts, and Swiss cheese.
That I don't think that that's very funny, but maybe our listeners thought that was. So have a
John,
nice.
are you ever gonna laugh at one of these? I feel like you're just purposely trying to put me down by
Well,
not laughing.
all I can say, Nick, is my style of comedy is I think that I've only laughed at actually no I take that back. I've laughed at two comedians ever, and one of them is Sinbad, and the other one was well, Bill Cosby's like 1990s special uh before he did everything wrong that made me want to
Well, I think he was
get
doing all that stuff wrong at that time. It just didn't come out until much
right
more recently.
exactly. So but I did uh get rid of that DVD
So you're saying,
because
John, is you're just a tough audience.
Yes, I'm a very tough audience,
Okay.
Nick.
All right.
So
Very discerning
maybe
eye.
get up to Sinbad level, and then we
I'm not.
will
I'm
we'll
not a
talk
professionally trained
then, Nick.
comedian, John. I don't have the instruction that he probably and the experience.
Well, that's okay, Nick.
You put me
I
on the
think,
spot here and expect big results.
well, I think Sinbad is very funny, and I would, say watch a few of his movies and get some tips, Nick.
Oh boy.
All right, have a nice week, everyone.
Yes. Take care.
You've been listening to Funny is Part of My Name. Please visit www.johnoaks.com for resources and recordings from past episodes. And don't forget to join us back